Hey everyone, and welcome to the next episode of our Planet Coaster 2 element tutorial series, where in this episode we're going to be tackling one of the more difficult elements, the Zero G roll. Now, I'm going to split this into two parts, like I did last time, with the invert and the sit down being separate, so skip the time shown on screen here if you just want to see the inverted coaster tutorial, as there are some pretty key differences in building both the elements. So without further ado, I'm going to crack on with the sit down version. So to start, we're just going to use the same coaster that we used in the last episode, as it's going to make it easier for pacing and things. So the first key thing to remember, as I said last time, is think about your speed. So this coaster has a 112 foot tall loop, which it goes through at about 20 miles an hour. So we're going to want this to be just shy of about 100 foot tall, in order to make sure that it doesn't go through it too quickly or with too much force. So to start with, we're basically just going to be building a pretty, not like a too steep hill, but probably around 35-degree entry, so or towards like 40, and that way we're not going to be going into it with too much speed. And basically we're just going to be building a Zero G hill almost, and then we're going to apply the roll at the same time. And that's pretty much all a Zero G roll is, really, in theory. So I'm going to head up to about 40 degrees, maybe add like a little bit of pitch there. And then when we get to about 45 foot, in my case, but obviously this will vary, so think about your speed and size, we're going to start rolling. Now, the roll will start the most gradual at the beginning, and then it will sort of increase as you get to the middle and the top, as most Zero G rolls, when built in the B&M style, use force to shape them, and that is where most of the force is applied towards the top of the roll. Now, I've started and banked it about 20 degrees, then we're going to do it again to about 45. Again, these numbers I'm just throwing away in this example, but they may slightly change depending on yours. So these two pieces I'm going to keep at the same angle, and then when we get to these pieces I'm going to start lowering it. And then this lowering is where the heart line will start to take over and give us that really nice shape. Lower it a little bit more, get the roll nice and high, get to about 15 degrees, start to bank it over at about 140 degrees, hit 0 and get to 180. It's a pretty gentle Zero G roll, but it gives you a very nice, good indication of the shape is what you're going for. So we're gonna continue with this roll for now. So basically, now that we've got this shape, now I'm gonna go side on here, and this is the kind of shape that you're going to be wanting to look for. Nice straight line, and then this rail here starts to go higher than this pitch but stays at the same angle. And what I'm going to do is just mirror this on the other side exactly the same way I built it on the outside. So now that I've built the other half of my roll, I think this looks a little bit shallow. So what I'm going to do is take the top half of the roll and pull it up slightly, and we're just going to adjust each side respectively to get that nice straight line shape that most of these Zero G rolls tend to have in real life. And as you can see here, that looks a little bit more aggressive, and the smoothing will sort of fix those little inconsistencies. And I'm also going to slightly tweak the banking at this point, as I feel like there's a little bit too much of a snap. And basically you just want a really nice constant roll that goes through there, and I can already see kind of there that these two transitions are a little bit too sharp, so I'm just going to kind of half this by giving it a 10 degree and then auto complete it to give us a much more gentle entry there, as you can see. So that is a nice way of also fixing if you have maybe like a too sharp element. You can pretty much just get it fixed manually by tweaking some of your roll values. As I always like to preach, always edit before you start smoothing, and then that way the smoothing tool doesn't have to work as hard, and then you get results that you're much more expecting of, and then that way everybody's happy with the results that you end up getting after smoothing. So again, I'm just going to add a 10 degree bit there, auto complete it on there. That is now backwards, which is rather annoying, but for now we'll just deal with that. Now that we have the rough shape of the Zero G roll pretty much perfect, we're going to take the entry points that are not banked at all, there's no roll applied to them, and we're just going to smooth them, just so we get a nice radius going in and out. And I always like to use this method of spam smooth this section, move it up one, back towards this already pre-smoothed bit, so then that way you're creating a smooth transition between pieces. And there we go, that should do nicely, and we'll just go ahead and smooth the exit too, so that way we are getting a nice result. So now that we've done this, I've found that the best way to get Zero G rolls to keep their shaping nicely is to start on a very low smooth setting of a like 1 pretty much, and go about halfway down the roll, select the whole thing, and we're just going to spam smooth it a couple of times and watch what it does to our shaping. And as you can see here, it's starting to equal it out. And then now we're going to move it up to 2. Move it up to 3. And finally, a couple of clicks with 4. And then that way, if I press done, you can see here, we've still got Heartline, which is nice. But the banking is a little bit too much at the moment on the entry and exit, so we're going to go through and we're going to fix that. That missing cross tie, it's just proof they still kept the same track generation software for Planet Coaster 2, which we love. So what we're going to do now is go through and just manually re-edit that banking, and then do a bit of more spam smoothing, which I have found seems to be the best way to build coasters now, which is the complete opposite to how I used to build it in Planko 1. So quickly just fix all the banking here. Quick little trick to get everything back to 90 degrees, or 0 degrees even, is just set your angle snap to 90, and then get it back to 0 like that. Now we're just going to pretty much adjust this. Okay, now that we've got the track adjusted back to a similar shape and roll pattern to how we had it pre-smoothing, we're basically now going to get the final smooth done. So select the entire element here back towards the pre-smooth section, and I'm going to use a smooth setting of 3, and I'm going to spam smooth it maybe 20 times. And then that way, we should now have a perfectly smooth Zero G roll. This method seems to be the best way I've found of doing it, so we're going to go ahead and give it a ride to confirm whether or not that is smooth. As I said in the last episode, I found that the guest facing is the best way to see what we're looking at. Now that is very smooth. That is actually a lot smoother than I was expecting from a result such as this. You might notice there was a slight jitter in the exit and entrance, and that is because the game doesn't seem to smooth the start of a roll as well as it does the midpoint, but as you noticed as we got towards the top there, you got that perfectly consistent roll, which I think is absolutely stunning, and it looks really, really smooth. So I'm just going to quickly have a look at that from the front row as well, and then that way we can check what the actual riding shaping looks like as well. And that looked pretty perfect to me, if I do say so myself. So that's how you get a really nice B&M style Sitdown Zero G roll. As I've always mentioned, your results may vary slightly with size and shape, and obviously if you're going to invert this and go the other direction, just keep that in mind with some of the values that you might run into. But basically, you're going to want this sort of side profile, nice triangular shape, and then through the middle it should kind of look a bit like a keyhole, where you have the track going either side of the roll, and from the top you should have this nice sort of very shallow Z shape, almost like a, it's almost like a DNA twist or something like that. And that's pretty much all there is to Sitdown Zero G rolls. So let's move on to the inverted coaster ones. So building the inverted coaster Zero G roll is a bit different to how you do it in the sit down over here, whereas on this one you have this nice triangular shape. On an invert it has that very distinctive, almost flat bottom shape, where it almost like has a straight line and like a barrel roll in the middle. So in order to do that, we are going to have to do some slight sort of tweaking when it comes to our shaping in order to get that nice result. So what I've done here is just build a very quick drop with the coaster hitting the bottom at about 51 miles an hour, which means we're going to want a pretty tall Zero G roll. So I'd say we're probably going to aim to make our one about 70 to 80 foot tall, similar to how we did on the other coaster there. So to begin this one, we're going to pull up towards a normal, sort of hill if we're going up, and you want to make sure you've got a negative offset on for the invert, because if you just imagine we've got the normal sit down but we flip the track upside down, so we need to invert the offset as well, which is something that I think people always forget to use, or they maybe use the different offset that they're meant to. So for this one we're going to be using a -3 offset, and you might find that if you are running the game without any mods or anything at the moment, you might find that small pieces are refusing to build. Like this, for instance, the game might not let you build because it thinks it's too small, for instance. So just be careful when it comes to building something like that. So for now we're just going to start pulling up into a normal hill, and we're probably going to aim for again about 40 degrees so that we're not building something too steep. Just going to have to delete that, as I thought that radius was a little bit too sharp. So we're just going to pull up to about 40 degrees, make sure everything's nice and at 0, and then once we hit about 50 foot, this is where we start with the roll. Now again, the first part of the roll is always going to be the most gentle transition, so maybe 10 degrees, then knock it up to about 30, and the difference is here though, we're going to start pulling it down pretty early. So the second piece in, second one there, then we're going to twist it even more, pulling it down even further, so it gets this sort of, from the side you should start to build a curve, like it almost looks like a half circle, from following what my mouse is doing. And then once we get to this point, which is about 65 degrees and, you know, about 30 degrees, we're going to go 15, there it is, twist it to about 120 degrees, snap it to 0, and snap it to 180. And you can see there, we've already got the basis of our Zero G roll shape. Now, you may notice that when you look at certain B&Ms, they have different shaping. So they might have a top that's more rounded, or they might have a more flat shape. Now that all depends on the generation of the B&M invert. Some of the newer ones have slightly more gentle rolls and things, and in this case we're going to be building a slightly newer gen one, as the top is fairly curved compared to flat, but they all follow a very simple or similar principle when it comes to the actual shaping of them, so it really doesn't matter how you end up with the top, and you can always get that by adjusting the shaping manually afterwards. So as I did last time, I'm just going to flip this round so that we can build the other half. Okay, so now that we've built the other half of the Zero G roll, you're going to want this sort of shape, where you get almost like an N, but it's really rounded on both sides and it's pitching upwards, and then this is the sort of shape you want from the front as well, where you've got the track sort of, it's like it's leaning away from itself, and obviously again from the top, a similar shape to the sit down, but, you know, inverted, if you will, which makes not too much sense, but you get the picture. So from multiple angles, you should have nice different, like sort of straight line curves through here, and then a bunch of other different nice curved shapes here, as I mentioned, almost like that half circle there, and as long as your roll is tightest towards the top, you've nailed the shaping there. So one thing I am going to do quickly just for the smoothing is pull this section down slightly, as it does help with keeping that heart line, and pull these down slightly as well. And now that we've got that looking good, we're going to go through and do the smoothing process. So as I did last time, we're going to select up to the first part of the roll, use a 4 smoothness, and get the radius of the entrance and exit nice and smooth. Now this obviously will vary depending on how you've gone into the loop, the roll. You might have gone from straight into a loop, gone from a curve, gone from a drop, so this will all vary massively, but the middle portion of the Zero G roll will stay the same largely for every coaster that you build. So let's quickly just do that for the other side. Okay, so now that those are smooth, we're again going to take our smooth strength down to 1, select the entire element here, and we're going to start smoothing, but again you're going to watch what the smoothing tool does to your shaping. See how it's raising that middle portion up, and that's why we pushed it down so it doesn't ruin it too much. Now that we've got the first section nice and smooth, we're again going to go to a 2, 3, and then a few clicks on a 4. And what you get here is this really nice consistent roll and a pretty high taper pitch up there, so this is more of a new gen roll, but as long as you've got this sort of rough shape, you should be good to go. As you can see from the top as well, we've still got that nice heart line. And if you're finding that your smoothing tool is removing too much of your heart line, you can always set the heart line offset to a much higher number so that the game doesn't get rid of it quite as soon. Now, one thing we're again going to do is go through and adjust that banking to get everything nice and normal through the middle. Okay, so now that we've got the banking roughly to where we want it to be, we're again going to take the whole element, keep that smooth strength of about 3, and we're just going to click it a few times to get the roll nice and smooth. Let's do a couple more, and I'd say that's pretty perfect. So let's give it a quick test on ride to see what sort of shape we're getting with this roll. This time I'm just going to test it from the front row view, and then we'll have a look at the back row one to see what the actual roll consistency is like. That's a pretty good roll. You'll find that the one I've built here is very akin to a new Gen Zero G roll, and the overall result there is pretty perfect given the shaping style that I wanted. Now, as you might have seen in the Fury video, or the one where I time-lapsed my first B&M build, you might have noticed that that one was much more aggressive and a lot lower, and that's because I built it using the old style one, which is where you pitch the middle down a lot more. And if you want to get that sort of result, all you need to do is use a much sharper roll rate, and then maybe when you're editing it, pull it down so that you get a shape roughly like this, so that when you smooth it, you get something that looks a bit more like that compared to the more gentle hill that we had before. So it's all about preference and the result you're trying to go for, but in terms of a new gen roll, this was pretty perfect. So let's have a quick look from the back row and then see what we can see with the roll rate. Yeah, that roll rate's lovely. Really nice and consistent through the top there. So as you can see, that is the method I found to getting those nice Zero G rolls. And as I've said, I might make a more in-depth video on proper B&M shaping, but this also works for like Vacomas and any other inverted coaster you might find, because a lot of inverted coasters tend to use this style of Zero G roll more than the B&M ones, where it's really pitched and it's more similar shape design to this one as well. So this acts as more of a general rule, whereas if you want specific really nice B&M shaping, maybe we could do a video on how to get that really nice overall result. But as you can see, we've still got that really nice Zero G shape through the middle with a nice smooth final result for sure. So thank you very much for watching this instance of the Element tutorial series. I'll be back at some point with more content. I'm trying not to upload too many of these in one go, but I've had to make this video and get it out for today, as I'm currently away at home, away from university, taking a few days off because it's I've got my birthday coming up and I'm having to take some time off from making videos. So that's why we've got this video today, and then in the future I'll be able to get some more stuff out soon. So thank you very much for watching, stay tuned for more, and I'll see you all next time.